gives me the great pleasure to present to you today Professor Milton Friedman.
I want to talk today about the contrast between myths that are widely believed by the public at large and what I regard as a reality which typically contradicts those myths. As you are all aware, there has been a drastic shift in public attitudes and public opinions in the past 50 years or so with respect to the role of the individual on the one hand and the role of government and collective institutions on the other. There has been a shift in the philosophy and attitudes of the public from a belief in individual responsibility, from a belief in a society in which the role of government was as an umpire, to a belief in a society in which the emphasis is on social responsibility and the role of government as big brother and protector of the individual. As always, when such shifts arise in public opinion, they are largely produced and reinforced by the development of myths about prior experience. Someone once wrote, and I'm not sure who it was, that a myth is like an air mattress. There's nothing in it, but it's wonderfully comfortable, and deflation causes an uncomfortable jolt. Well, my purpose today is to give you that jolt. When myths get established and are adopted, they tend to be so strongly held, they tend to become so much a part of you, that when anyone comes along and differs with them and contradicts them, he risks automatically being dismissed as a crackpot. But I shall nonetheless take the risk of being dismissed as a crackpot because it seems to me so urgent that we deflate these myths, recognize what the reality is, in order to be able to provide a basis for a change in our philosophy, a reversal of the direction of our thought. In my opinion, if we do not do so, if we continue on the road we have been going, if we continue to rely more and more on government and less on the individual, we are condemned to a future of tyranny and misery. And therefore, it seems to me essential for the future of this country that we recognize these myths for what they are and adjust our thinking to a correct perception of our present and our past.
Sometime in 1934, two men got off separate trains at Union Station in Washington, D.C.
Here are my 7 points. First, it is misleading and just plain incorrect to claim that disasters associated with hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, or drought have increased on climate timescales either in the United States or globally. Hurricanes have not increased in the U.S. in frequency, intensity, or normalized damage since at least 1900. The same holds for tropical cyclones globally since at least 1970, when we have good data. Tornadoes have not increased in frequency, intensity, or normalized damage since at least 1950, and there's some evidence to suggest they've actually declined. The inability to detect and attribute changes in hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, and drought does not mean that human-caused climate change is not real or of concern. It does mean, however, that some activists, politicians, journalists, corporate and government agency representatives, and even scientists who should know better have made claims that are just unsupportable based on evidence and research. It's my view that such false claims undermine the credibility of arguments for action on climate change. And to the extent that these false claims confuse those who are making decisions related to extreme events, they could, in fact, lead to poor decision making.
If you want to increase the size of the government, when there's a hurricane, attribute it to climate change, which of course we all know is because of human activity, which of course must be regulated. That's the game plan. That's pretty simple. They never prove or demonstrate or give evidence that climate change is unusual. They never prove or demonstrate or give evidence that climate change is caused by or influenced by human activity. And there is no reason in the world to assume that human activity, every human activity, must be regulated, taxed, and controlled. But that's the game plan. And that's my national climate assessment for 2014.